Today we're going to go over to the 2.5 homework. It's the second part. It really, once again, shouldn't be homework. It should have been completed in class. But in case you didn't finish in class, it was assigned for homework. It's on page 124, 12 to 28 even. Okay, this is all going to use synthetic division. Alright, so when we talk, all these problems are going to use synthetic division. Synthetic division is a much easier version of division because it's going to remove all the variables. So if you ever have any letters inside your synthetic division box, you're making a mistake. The biggest rule about synthetic division, the reason we don't use it all the time, is you have to have x to the first power minus a. So x plus or minus a number. It doesn't really matter which one you have, but that's kind of, it could be any number, but it has to be x minus a, x plus a. If you have that, you can use synthetic division, and here's the steps you follow. Step 1 says you make a synthetic box. Step 2 says you put the coefficients. So the numbers that show up in the problem go on the inside of the box, and then you use your divisor, and you take the opposite of that and put it outside the box. Step 3 says you just add the numbers inside, then multiply the numbers outside, and then when you're out of room, you put your variables back in. And that's all you do for synthetic division. Alrighty, 12, we have 4x squared minus 13x minus 5 divided by x minus 2. This tells us, because it's x minus a number, we're allowed to do synthetic division, and we actually call that divisor form. So that's our divisor form. Okay. And remember, step 1, so in case you're lost, you look back and follow your steps. Here's the steps we're going to follow. Step 1 says we're going to make our box. Step 2 says that you're going to put your coefficients inside the box and put the opposite a outside the box. So the coefficients are 4, negative 13, and negative 5. Now remember, I always have to make sure I can count down. I use the exponents to tell me that. 2, 1, 0, I do not need a placeholder, so there is no placeholder. Remember, if you forget your placeholder on any of these problems, you can't actually, it's impossible to get the correct answer. So put 4 here, negative 13, negative 5. That's a negative 2. Remember, like I said, negative 2 is hanging out with your x. So if you see that, that means they're lying. So you put the opposite of negative 2, you put a positive 2 outside. Now there's two ways to do it. You can either put a 0 in right underneath the 4, or you can just drop it down. But if you put a 0 in, it just follows step 3. Step 3 says you add the numbers that are inside, you multiply the numbers that are outside until you run out of room. 4 plus 0 is 4. Now 4 is on, this is a new 4, it's on the outside, so I do 4 times 2, because 2 is also on the outside, and it gives me 8. Now I add, negative 13 and 8 is negative 5. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Negative 10 and 5 is negative 15. I always circle my last one, because that's my remainder. Remember, step 4 says to put your exponents, put your variables back in. Your new variables are always 1 degree less. So I have x squared. That means that's going to be 4x. And then if I'm doing my countdown, this next one doesn't have a letter because I have x to the first, so there's no x's. And then I add my remainder, negative 15. Remember, our remainder theorem tells us we put the divisor on the bottom of that fraction. And that's it. Here's number 12. Moving on to 14. Alright, 14. Step 1, I make my box. I need a placeholder. So you need a placeholder. Because there is no x to the first power. So I put 1, 0, 9 as my coefficients. This is in divisor form, so we take that negative 3 and we change the sign, make it positive 3. Now, put a 0 there. 1 and 0 is 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 0 and 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 and 9 is 18. I circle it, and that's our remainder. Now I had x squared, so my answer is always 1 less. So it becomes 1x plus 3 plus my remainder all over my divisor, the whole divisor, x minus 3. And that's it. 16. Alright. Once again, I make my box at step 1. I need a placeholder because I have x cubed. I do not have an x squared. That's why I need the placeholder. Minus 4x plus 6. So I put 1, 0, negative 4, and 6. I have plus 3, so I put negative 3 on the outside. And now I put a 0 in there. 1 and 0 is 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. 0, negative 3 is negative 3. Negative 3 is positive 9. That's positive 5. Negative 15 becomes negative 9. That's my remainder. So once again, that's step 3. Step 4 says you put your letters back in. Well, I have x cubed, so it's going to be 1 less, x squared. Minus 3x plus 5 plus negative 9 all over my entire divisor, x plus 3. And that's it for 16. 18. I make my box. I don't need a placeholder. Put 1, 4, 16, minus 35 in the box. I have plus 5, so I put negative 5 on the outside. I put a 0 in, and now I just start doing step 3, which means you add on the inside, multiply on the outside. 1 and 0 is 1. Multiply on the outside, negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. 4 negative 5 is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5, so I put that here. 16 and 5 is 21. Negative 5 times 21 is minus 105. And together that becomes minus 140. Remember, that's my remainder. I take my degree, I put it down 1. So I have x cubed minus x squared plus 21x plus negative 140 all over x plus 5. And that's my final answer for 18. Moving on to 20. Alright, 20 says that the book made a mistake on purpose, and you're going to find that mistake. So the easiest way for me to find that is I just do this problem all without even looking at what the book has, and then I'm going to compare my answers and see where we're different. So I start with, that goes inside my box with no letters. So I have 1x cubed. Now remember, you need a placeholder because you can't count down. I have x cubed, but I don't have an x squared. I have minus 5x plus 3, so I put 1, 0, minus 5, and 3. Now remember, that's negative 2, so I put positive 2 on the outside. Put a 0 there, or the book just likes to drop it down. Either way, 1 and 0 is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 0 times 2, or 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 5 and 4 is negative 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And then we're left with 1 as our remainder. So that means, remember, our final answer says you take that x cubed, you minus 1 from that exponent, so it's x squared plus 2x minus 1 plus 1 over x minus 2. The book forgot their placeholder, if you can compare this. For x squared. So that's what the book thought. The book forgot that. And that's it for 20. Alright, 22 to 28. it says you need to factor completely. And 22 through 28 kind of look like what we did beforehand, where we factored by grouping. Factor by grouping does not work for 22 through 28 because it's impossible to make matching parentheses. All right. So what we're going to find out is that if they give you one factor, you can use synthetic division. So if given a factor, you use synthetic division. Good thing that's going to happen is, 1, no remainder. If you get a remainder, you made a mistake on your division somewhere. The other thing that's going to happen is you have to factor out your quotient using your previous skills. And then one thing we'll talk about is that you have to actually completely factor it out. You're going to have to put in your original factor they gave you. All right? So we're going to move on to 22. All right, in 22 they say that you have a function. That's all that f of x means, is it just means it's a function with a variable x. And see how that's where we have x's. X cubed plus 6x squared plus 5x minus 12. They're telling you this is a factor. All right? So like a factor is something that multiplies to give you this. So we just need to find the rest of the things that give us this. So we're going to use synthetic division. So I make my box. I use this to go inside my box. So I put 1, 6, 5, and negative 12. Factor is in divisor form. So that means I have to take that plus 4 and I make it minus 4. Put a 0 then, or drop it down. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 and negative 4 is negative 4. 6 plus negative 4 is 2. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. 5 and negative 8 is negative 3. Multiply negative 4 and negative 3, I get plus 12. And together that gives me 0. Remember, I knew that was going to happen. No remainder. That's supposed to happen anytime there's a factor. So I still write this as x squared plus 2x minus 3. I just don't write anything for that remainder. And now I factor this just like we've done before. How do you get x squared? X and x. How do you get negative 3? 3 and negative 1. 3 and negative 1 will give me 2 in the middle. So this becomes x plus 3, x minus 1. And because it says factor completely, I have to take down my original and put that in there as well. Because this factors it completely. If I multiplied these three things together, I could actually get that if I really wanted to. If I wanted to check my work, I could pick 2 of them, FOIL, then multiply use the distributive property to multiply the third one. So that's how we're going to do all these. We're going to use the synthetic division, then we're going to break it down whatever's remaining. So moving on. All right. So I have a new problem. 24 is x cubed plus 18x squared plus 95x plus 150. This does kind of look like something I can factor by grouping, but we know that this is unfactorable because I cannot make matching parentheses. You could try it if you want, but good luck with that. So I'm going to use synthetic division because they're telling me this is a factor. So I make my box. I put 1, 18, 95, and 150. Remember that 10 is hanging out with your x, so it's actually a negative 10 as your 0. I drop down, I put a 0 in there. 1 and 0 is 1. Negative 10 and 1 is negative 10. Gives me positive 8. Gives me minus 80. Gives me 15. Gives me negative 150. Gives me 0. Remember, that's my self-check. That's supposed to happen. No remainder because it's a factor. Now, I write it as x squared plus 8x plus 15 How do I get x squared? Well, x and x. How do I get 15? 5 and 3, or 15 and 1. 5 and 3 works. So this becomes x plus 5, x plus 3. Remember, you have to bring down this original factor to get x plus 10. And that's it. Moving on. All right, in 26, I'm going to spend a little bit less time going through things. I'm just going to kind of run through it. We have this function, so I make my box. 1, negative 9, 8, and 60. Negative 2 goes on the outside because that's a positive. Drop it down. 1 and 0 is 1. Negative 2. Negative 9 and negative 2 is negative 11. Negative 2 times negative 11 is positive 22. 8 and 22 is 30. Negative 2 times 30 is minus 60. Look, my remainder is right here. No remainder, just like I wanted. This becomes x squared minus 11x plus 30. Well, how do I get x squared? X and x. How do I get 30? I could have negative 30 and 1 and negative 1. Negative 15 and negative 2. I could have negative 10 and negative 3. I could also have negative 5 and negative 6. See how negative 5 and negative 6 gives me that negative 11? So my final answer becomes x minus 5, x minus 6, and I can't forget x plus 2 because that's a factor. So that's it, factored completely. And that's it for 26. Moving on to the last one, 28. All right, 28, very similar concept. It's actually just the last step's going to be a little bit more difficult, but everything else is exactly the same. I put 3, negative 2, negative 61, minus 20, minus 5. So I put plus 5 here. I drop down the 3. If you want to see it like the book does, the book doesn't put anything there. They just drop down that 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Negative 2 and 15 is positive 13. 5 times 13 is positive 65. Get a positive 4, so 5 times 4 is positive 20, which means my remainder is 0, just like I want. That's what I wanted. And now I'm just going to break that down, or put my letters back in. 3x squared plus 13x plus 4. Now this one's a little bit harder just because it's just a little bit harder thing to factor, because I have 3x and x. How do I get 4? How about 2 and 2? Or 4 and 1? I know they're both positive. So I say 3x plus 2, x plus 2, and I see how that's going to work. 3x plus 2 is 6x, and 2x. Together, that's 8x. It's not 13x, so I know that's not going to work. So I hope I have 3x plus 4. X plus 1. Let's try that. 3x and 1 is 3x. 4 and x is 4x. Together, that's 7x. So that's not going to help me. So I hope my last chance is 3x plus 1. X plus 4. Outside gives me 12x. The inside gives me 1x. Together, that's 13x. So that's good. And then I can't forget my x minus 5. So that's my final answer. So notice with this one, I just had to check it a couple times, and that's it. And we're done with this homework.